This is a training session regarding entering and changing pieces of equipment in the Equipment Costing module. First, we need to select Equipment from the Equipment Costing menu. This is where we enter new pieces of equipment and edit the attributes of existing pieces of equipment. The first thing we see is a list of all the existing pieces of equipment listed alphabetically by equipment ID or alphabetically by description. We can select one of these items and click on the Change button. This screen comes into view. We can now enter an ID number, a description, a vehicle identification number or VIN, and a class code. This is a user-definable code that you can use to classify your equipment into such categories as heavy or light truck or passenger vehicle or other different types of equipment. Next is the location of the equipment, the license plate number, and the license code. This license code might be the month and year that the registration or license expires, so we can renew it on a timely basis. Here we can enter the current meter reading, either miles or hours used, on the piece of equipment. Next is a checkbox to indicate if this piece of equipment is currently active. Next is the certified craft code or certified ID. If time is charged to this piece of equipment during payroll timesheet entry, this certified craft code will automatically be used on the timesheet. On the right-hand side of the screen, we have the usage rates. Whenever we use a piece of equipment on a job, we can charge that usage to the job. The system will then track how much time has gone to equipment usage for that job as a job expense. That charge will also be treated as equipment income. Enter the internal charge rate, which is the dollar amount per hour or day or week that we are going to charge our own job for the use of our equipment. The rental rate, on the other hand, is the rate we would charge an outside person to use that piece of equipment. In most cases, the rental rate will be higher than the internal rate that we charge to our own jobs. Here we can enter the average number of units used per day. In the case of our backhoe, this would be the average number of hours this piece of equipment is used each day. If the unit of measurement is miles, the amount would be the average number of miles the piece of equipment is driven each day. This figure is important if we're going to be tracking a maintenance schedule on any of the cost categories on this piece of equipment. After you have used the system for a few months, you may click on the Recalculate button, and the system will provide the average number of units per day for you. On the next tab, we have some fixed asset information about this piece of equipment, including when it was purchased, the purchase cost, the salvage date, and the number of years it is to be depreciated. The third tab is the list of maintenance categories assigned to this piece of equipment. We can now add any number of maintenance categories to which we can expense costs for this piece of equipment. For example, we might have fuel costs, lubrication and oil costs, depreciation costs, and tires and tubes. We could also have a category for servicing. This category could receive payroll costs when our own employees service this piece of equipment. There are lots of kinds of costs we might anticipate charging to this piece of equipment. In order to charge these costs to the equipment, we must have an existing cost category for that particular type of cost. To insert a new category for this piece of equipment, we click the Insert button. Then we can select from a list of cost categories that have been previously created. Select an appropriate cost category. The unit name and expense account will be inserted automatically. Then we click on the OK button, and this new category will be added to our list box. We then see on the list box some information about cumulative costs, year-to-date, and month-to-date costs for each category. This summarizes how much cost has been charged to this piece of equipment from the subsidiary modules of accounts payable and payroll. At the bottom of the screen, we have totals for the amount of income that has been generated by this particular piece of equipment. In other words, how much it was used on our own jobs or rented to outside companies. The dollar value of that usage is indicated here. With this type of information being tracked, the system can calculate a profit rate for each piece of equipment. Profit figures can be found here or on the Equipment Cost Analysis report. On the next tab, we can enter a service schedule for individual cost categories. That is, we can indicate how frequently this type of part replacement or service should be performed. You'll notice that the list box contains the same cost categories we entered in the previous tab. Let's edit the service schedule for our oil filters. In this case, the service schedule is an indication of how often the filter should be replaced. Pull down the Schedule Type box. Notice that we can select from None, Meter, Elapsed Time, or both Meter or Elapsed Time. If we select Meter, we will be able to indicate that the service should be performed once every so many miles or once every so many hours. If we select Elapsed Time, we will be able to indicate how often, measured in days or months, the service should be performed. If we select both, we will be able to indicate that the service should be performed whenever the first of these two conditions is met. For our oil filter, we'll say it should be replaced every 3 months or 3,000 miles. At the bottom of the screen, we can indicate the meter reading and the date the last time the oil filter was changed on this backhoe. On the next tab, we can enter a photograph of the piece of equipment. We can click on the ellipsis button, select any bitmap image file, and bring that file onto the screen. The next tab is the User Defined tab. In this tab, we can enter up to 15 different fields of information on each piece of equipment, which have a common label or category on all pieces of equipment. For example, if we wish to create a category called Color, we click on the Edit Prompts checkbox and type in Color. We can then click again on the Edit Prompts checkbox, and the category has now been changed. At this point, we can enter the color of this piece of equipment. All of the pieces of equipment will now have a common category called Color, but they can each have a different color listed in the value field. This concludes this training session on entering and changing pieces of equipment.